You're standing in a grocery store, staring at two brands of the same thing. One costs $2 more, and you can't decide. You stand there for 30 seconds, a minute, your chest tightens. It's just $2, but right now, in this moment, your brain is running on fewer resources than it needs to make that decision. And it's not because you're bad with money. It's not because you're indecisive. It's not a character flaw. It's because scarcity, real or perceived, physically reduces your cognitive capacity. And the worst part, you will never feel it happening. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what scarcity does to the brain and why willpower was never the answer. But first, the research that should have changed everything. In 2013, two behavioral scientists published something that should have rewritten every assumption we have about poverty. Sendil Mullainathan at Harvard and Eldar Shaffer at Princeton. They called it the scarcity mindset, and they proved something devastating. Scarcity doesn't just limit what you can buy, it limits how well you can think. Their experiment was elegantly simple. They gave people a set of cognitive tests, the kind that measure logical reasoning, impulse control, and decision-making speed. Then they primed half the participants with a single scarcity prompt, a question about how they would handle a financial emergency. The other half got a neutral question. The result: the group that was even briefly reminded of financial scarcity performed significantly worse. Not a little worse. The equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. One thought about not having enough money, and the brain's processing power dropped measurably. That wasn't a long-term study. That was minutes. Imagine what years do. Here is where the neuroscience comes in, and this is the part that matters. Your brain has a fixed amount of what researchers call cognitive bandwidth, the mental resources available for attention, reasoning, and self-control at any given moment. Think of it like a computer with limited RAM. When you're not worried about money, that RAM is available for everything: decisions, planning, patience, long-term thinking. But when scarcity enters the picture, whether it's an empty bank account, an overdue bill, or just the fear of not having enough, your brain dedicates a massive portion of that RAM to one thing. The scarcity, the unpaid rent, the credit card balance, the number in your checking account. Mullainathan and Shaffer call this cognitive tunneling. Your focus narrows to the immediate threat. Everything outside the tunnel, future consequences, long-term planning, even simple logical reasoning, goes dark. Not because you chose to ignore it, because the brain literally does not have the resources to process it. This is why someone making $25,000 a year might take a payday loan with 400% interest. Not because they don't understand interest, because the part of their brain that would evaluate that interest is already running at capacity, processing the fact that they need $300 by Friday. The tunnel only lets in what's urgent. The cost of the loan is outside the tunnel. It's not visible, not because the person is irrational, because their cognitive bandwidth has been consumed by scarcity itself. And this is where it gets devastating, because scarcity doesn't just reduce bandwidth. It creates the very conditions that demand more bandwidth. You're short on money, so you take a high-interest loan. The loan payment consumes more of your next paycheck. Now you're shorter, so you skip a bill. Late fee. Now you're shorter again. Every decision the scarcity-tunneled brain makes tends to make the scarcity worse. This is not a character flaw. This is a loop, and it has a name: the scarcity trap. Consider this. A person with financial stability makes a financial mistake, overspends, forgets a payment. The consequences are uncomfortable. A late fee, a smaller savings account. Annoying, but survivable. The same mistake made by someone living in scarcity can trigger an overdraft fee, which triggers another overdraft fee, which triggers a returned payment, which damages their credit, which raises their interest rates on everything. One mistake, different consequences. Not because the person is different, because the margin is different, and margin is the thing scarcity eliminates first. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most financial advice refuses to acknowledge. Every budget app, every financial planner, every just be more disciplined piece of advice assumes the same thing: that the person hearing it has the cognitive bandwidth to act on it. They don't. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, impulse control, and long-term decision-making, is the first thing that goes offline under scarcity. Not after months of poverty, within minutes of being reminded about financial stress. The Mullainathan study proved this. This means that telling someone in financial scarcity to just budget better is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk faster. The very tool they need to follow that advice, cognitive bandwidth, is the thing that's been taken from them. Willpower is not a personality trait. It is a neurological resource, and scarcity drains it before you ever get to use it. So what works? Not willpower, architecture, changing the environment so that good decisions require less bandwidth, not more. 3 things, backed by research. First, automate every financial decision you can. Automatic savings transfers, automatic bill payments, automatic investment contributions. Every decision you remove from your daily bandwidth is bandwidth that stays available for everything else. Second, reduce daily financial decisions to a minimum. The fewer times you have to evaluate, can I afford this, the more cognitive bandwidth you preserve. Meal planning, subscription bundling, fixed cost choices, these aren't just budget hacks. They are bandwidth preservation strategies. Third, build margin before you need it. Even a small emergency fund, $500, $300, even $100, reduces the cognitive load of scarcity. Not because it solves every problem, because it gives your brain one fewer thing to process, and that freed up bandwidth improves every other decision you make. Your brain was not built for modern money, it was built for survival, and scarcity is the survival signal that never stops broadcasting. The tighter money gets, the more bandwidth gets consumed. The more bandwidth gets consumed, the worse the decisions become. The worse the decisions become, the tighter money gets. That's not a character flaw, that's a system, and the only way to break it is not to think harder inside the tunnel. It's to build a structure outside it. Subscribe, because next week we're going even deeper. See you then.